Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to the Heartbeat. Today we're going to be talking about Clint Eastwood's Sully. Join me, will you? So, in Sully, we meet Captain Chesley Sullenberger, the pilot of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, a flight which, after being struck by a flock of geese, is forced to make an emergency landing in the Hudson River. But as it turns out, this is just the beginning of the drama for our heroic captain, who, after the incident, is kind of placed under really intense scrutiny by an airline that is very intent on ascertaining whether or not he made the right decision in landing in the river on that fateful afternoon in January 2009. Now, to be frank, prior to about a week ago, I'd actually only ever seen one Clint Eastwood film, that being 2003's Mystic River, which just wasn't quite enough to get a real sense of the filmmaker, his style, or his worldview. So, with what little time I had, I quickly rushed out and watched Unforgiven, Million Dollar Baby, and American Sniper, the last of which was nominated for Best Picture, while the first two actually took home that Oscar. And even if you feel like those films didn't quite deserve to win the Academy Award, they are undeniably the work of a seasoned veteran, bearing the marks in the best possible way of a filmmaker who has been in front and behind the camera for over 60 years. And really all of Clint Eastwood's films, at least the five that I've seen anyways, really are a lot like him. Quiet, unassuming, confident, and at their best, almost allergic to anything sentimental. Which is not in any way to say that I don't love films stuffed full of heightened, sweeping emotions. Steven Spielberg, after all, is my very favorite director. But there is something about Eastwood's comparatively cut-and-dry approach that serves the specific stories that he's chosen to tell so very well. And Sully really was no exception by crafting a film that, for the most part anyways, so deliberately avoided any sort of over-dramatized emotion. Eastwood did help us, the audience, to just embrace the reality of what was happening on screen all the more. So, for example, in the earlier parts of the film, I really kind of did feel like I was boarding a real Airbus A320. And not just because all these sights and sounds of that environment were so accurately recreated, but because they were shown and then dismissed just as quickly as they would be in reality. I mean, how many times have we seen, heard, and then kind of just halfway tuned out that very obligatory safety presentation? And this approach was seen all the way down to the way that Eastwood framed and composed his shots, which at times could have felt like they were just the product of a director who couldn't be bothered to pushing closer than a two-shot, but actually were the result of a filmmaker very intentionally restraining his visual vocabulary so that when he did push in or slow things down, it really packed a punch. And the way that Eastwood directed his actors too also fell perfectly in line with this approach, which is why Tom Hanks was so very perfect for the lead role. That man can be so very minimalistic, fitting right into this director's style, while also remaining engaging and empathetic. And in the same way, by presenting the emergency responders from the ferry captains to the Coast Guardians in such a matter-of-fact way, i.e. not how someone like Michael Bay would have shown them, smothered in bombastic music and glamorized with a 360 spin, we were reminded in a really poignant way of the real law enforcement and actual servicemen and women who seek to serve and protect us every single day. And so, in the quiet, simple ways that Eastwood directs his camera and his performers, we do see that man's love for making his audience lean in and peer closely at his films, knowing that, in real life, often the most impactful moments are the ones that, as they're occurring anyways, feel incredibly small, quiet, and even inconsequential. But also in the ways that he edits his films do we see this filmmaker's delight in forcing the audience to read between the lines and sometimes even between the scenes, and that was certainly the case on Sully as well. The film was constantly jumping around in time, moving from moments before to moments during to moments after the crash, and not only that, but also moving from one perspective to another as the event unfolded. And all of this really did play perfectly into this film's central question, that being, could this airline that had just lost millions of dollars trust just one man's perspective? And even more interesting still, could that man trust his own perspective? And that intercutting and changing of point of view really did an excellent job of kind of just keeping us, the audience, off balance, as it very patiently and precisely kind of just doled out these very fragmented pieces of what happened. Of course, that's not to say this is a perfect film. Curiously, the script itself often felt just a little heavy-handed, just in how it chose to reveal what was happening in Sully's head, specifically in the usage of a couple of flashbacks that delved further back into the pilot's past. Additionally, the antagonists in the film, I thought, too often were over the top in their villainy, which did feel particularly out of place in this otherwise grounded film. So, over the last week, I've kind of had this interesting experience watching all these Clint Eastwood films, because as I've watched them, I have kind of found that moment to moment, I'm not all that affected by what's happening on screen, but as I get out of the film and kind of reflect upon the thing and think about the sum of all those individual moments, I am very affected by it. And that really is just the mark of a master, someone who has very intentionally laid all these stepping stones to get me to a very specific place and make me feel something very specific. And it's for those reasons I will give Sully a 3.5 out of 5. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film though, so definitely comment below. Let me know. What's your favorite Clint Eastwood film? What's your favorite Tom Hanks film? Kind of an impossible question, I'm sure, but definitely I would love to hear from you on it. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.